Let me just start sharing. We're going to be talking a little bit about logistics. In other words, cleaning data, very important to clean data. And we're going to learn a little bit about how to clean data in Excel. And also, oh, that was fast. So I'm not even introducing the background because you already guessed. Yes, I picked a simple one this time around. Now, the question is, which Dragon Ball? Because there's like a ton of them. So if you want to guess that one as well, go for it. So going back, we're going to be doing some logistics, some data cleaning, pivot tables, which are vital and very, very, very important. And using those pivot tables, we're actually going to start doing some visualizations as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But to get started, so if you could pick any superpower in the world, not the real world, the fictional world, which superpower would you pick? Imagine anything you can think of from any book, from any place. Teleportation. I love the people who just pick teleportation. Why fly when you could just be there? Traveling time, mind reading, invisibility. Mind reading, invisibility. Superman is not a superpower. Superman has a lot of superpowers. Money power. Well, that's a real one, by the way. You just need a lot of it. Speed, invisibility, unlimited knowledge. Interesting one. Speed and immortality. That's 2 superpowers. You only get to pick one. All right. So I see that everybody's ready. People sick of traffic. Yes, that's why they pick teleportation, because you get rid of traffic very quickly. Wonderful. So today we're going to be talking again about a little bit of logistics. And this has always been one of my favorite visuals to think about data. So when you collect data, a lot of it looks like this. You sort of organize it. And most of the time we sort of pick the data here in this particular spot. So when we download data from databases, or we get an Excel sheet, we get something like this. It's not necessarily as ordered as we want it to be. Sometimes it looks like this, but it's sort of like this. And we sort of need to fix that before we move on to this. What is this? Well, we need to organize the data in a visual format so that we can start analyzing it better. Sometimes that means charts, sometimes that just means tables. And that's why today's topic of pivot tables is going to be so important. So today in particular, we're going to be talking how we can visualize census data to do market research. So let's think a little bit about this. Census data is data that is collected by countries, and it's been collected for a long, long time. I mean, there were census back in the Roman Empire, maybe even some in parts of the in the Greek cities. Why? Because this information becomes important to make big decisions. If we understand the people that live in our country, we can make better decisions. So today we are going to be using census data. And the census data in particular is very important for market research. Why? Because when we want to do market research, we want to know how many people there are of particular age groups, particular genders, etc., so that we can better decide how to promote our products. Now, in particular today, and this is going to be the goal for the day, is learning how to clean data, how to filter data, how to make some pivot visualization, how to make some pivot tables, and how to visualize some of these census data. So imagine, let's think about it like this. You're a data analyst at a consumer research group. In other words, this is a company that does data analytic for marketing purposes. And their specialty is to bring new products to the market. Your product, for this project, what they want you to do is to figure out what is the fastest growing consumer demographic in the US, and use that particular information to determine what products they can develop to cater to that particular demographic. In other words, who is the biggest market right now? And so that we can develop something to sell to those groups of people in general. The problem is they want you to pull the data from the US Census and find the population size of different age groups. Very important, separated by gender, male and female. Your task, by sex in this case, male and female, your task is particularly to produce an interactive report that can visualize the size of the different demographic groups. And we are going to produce a report in an Excel sheet. Now, to make things easier, they've already given us the data. So if you've downloaded, great. If you haven't, you can use the link I'm sending to you. Just remember, I'm linking my data sheet. So if you want to use it, you have to make a copy. So if you're going to use this data, by the way, and as you can see, it's a little bit messy, you have to go to File and you have to create a copy. All right, create a copy online. Very important in case you're using the link that I just sent to you. All right, so why is this whole idea of data analytics in market research important? This is what, so market research has been around for decades, and it's very, very important. They actually use the data from censuses and from other sources to understand many things. So market size and specifics, which is what we're going to do today. Sometimes they learn about psychographic data. So psychographic data is everything that tells people a little bit about you, about what you do. So for example, if you like to drink beer, if you like to drink wine, if you have a dog, if you have a cat, that kind of information is called psychographic information. And it's also very important for marketing purposes. This actually allows people to actually make market-based decisions. So in other words, who should you build new products for? Which is the growest market, which is what we're going to find out today. And practically every company. So every company that has a marketing department has at least one data analyst working at that department. That is vital. And of course, census information is what's going to allow us to do a lot of that marketing research. So the data that we have comes from the US Census, also known as the Population Housing Census, which, as I mentioned before, is vital. Every single country has this information. And what they do is they collect information on everything they can. So sex, gender, age, how many people live in a certain place, escolarity, socioeconomic background, all those things, because that helps us make better decisions as a country. So let's first take a little bit of a look at the data. What do you see here? Why is this data looks so messy? So we have 3 rows and a few hundred columns. If we keep going, look at this. So actually this data goes all the way to, I think this one. Yeah, column QP. So it went through all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, all the D's, etc. So it has tons of columns. So the first thing that you can see here, it looks like it's not organized. It's very difficult to read. It is actually not as disorganized as you think. It is just organized in a wide format. And that's one of the things that can happen. But yeah, what do you notice? So it's wide data. It's very difficult to read. It's very complicated. Now, we are used to long data. This is what we're used to seeing when we see any kind of data. So this is wide format over here. This is what we call wide format. So in other words, wide format is very particular because it allows us to put each subject of interest in each row. So we have A, B, C, and D, and we have all the information for each of them. So their age, their sex, how many votes they had in this particular case, etc., for each candidate. Now, wide data is a little bit more complicated. Now, it's still useful, but what it does, it's sort of tries to fit everything into very few columns, or in this case, into very few rows. So it looks more like this. So imagine it's this same data we have over here, but as you can see, let's see, for example, for candidate A, we have one row over here that has one variable, which is age, and a value, which is 54. So this is, in this row, we have this value over here. Then in this row over here, we have the sex and the value. So in that row, we have this value. And then on this row, we have votes, 870. So we have this value. So as you can see, it is still a perfectly valid format, but it's confusing. It's confusing because we have different rows for the same person on different variables. And this is exactly what's happening with our data over here. The only difference is that instead of being built on 3 columns, it actually built on 3 different rows, which makes it even more complex. So the first thing that we need to actually do to be able to work with this data is transform it into our long format. And even before we transform it into a long format we can use, because it's still going to be in wide format, we need to do something called transposing. Transposing is very important in all kinds of data, especially if you eventually enter data science and machine learning models, etc. So what you do is you're actually just transforming the rows into columns or the columns into rows, depending on which way you're doing. And this is actually exactly what, so transposing is not just like a matrix, it's a matrix. And it works exactly the same way. So what we're doing is actually, so just to give you a little bit, move over here. So what we're trying to do is, as you can see, we're trying to transform things so that each column becomes one row. Okay, so just let it go back 1 second. So again, what we want to do is this 1, 2 is going to become a row 1, 2. This 3, 4 becomes a row 3, 4. And this 5, 6 becomes a row 5, 6. So again, it's not putting it on the side, and that's very important to understand. We're not just flipping it on the side. We're actually just transforming rows and columns. So again, if you imagine that you had A, B, C, D, so what we want to do is we want to transform A, B, C, D, E, F. What we need to understand is this becomes so in this case, this would become the first column. So this would be AC. This will become the second column. So this will become BD, and this will become the third column. And I didn't leave enough space. So this will become EF. So in other words, we are not just flipping it on the side. We reorganize it. So instead of being the columns or rows, we're transforming into rows and columns. So we're just switching the order of the elements, but they have to keep the same structure, which is very important. So the first thing we are going to do is actually do exactly that. So let's go to our census data. You already have it. You're ready to start transposing and doing very cool stuff? Yes, ready, good. All right, so the first thing you're going to do, so we can actually transpose the data, is we need to select everything. Now, there's several ways to do this. You could actually just select everything like this, but clicking over here, let me actually open that and move this around. You can actually click on this corner over here, and that's going to select the whole sheet. But there is actually a better way to do this, and that is using Control and so I'm going to go up here, Control A. So Control A or Command A is actually going to select absolutely everything that has some data on it, as long as it's contiguous. All right. So again, you're going to use Control A, or if you're in a Mac, it's Command A. All right. So once you do this, Command A, it's going to select everything. And then we're going to do it like this. There's several ways to do it. You could use Control C or Command C. We can go up here to the clipboard and do copy. And we're going to move to this Census Data Pivot tab over here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to not just paste it. I'm going to click the right mouse button, sorry. And I'm going to go to Paste Special. And if you see here in Paste Special, there's this last one that says Transpose Rows and Columns. So that is going to do the transposition for you. And I'm going to click on that one, and this is what's going to happen. So now instead of 3 rows, we have 3 columns. Still, it's very messy. It's still not ready, but now it's one step further than what we need. All right. I'm going to go through that again, just in case. So we're going to come over here. Control or Command A, Control or Command A. I'm going to click my right mouse button. I'm going to select copy. I'm going to go to Census Data Pivot. I'm going to go to cell A1, right mouse button, Paste Special, and Transpose rows and columns. And that's it. We have already transposed our data. Now, here's an interesting thing over here. Let me just check to see what's happening. That's an interesting. So, Hassan, you have the transpose at the very, all the way down to the right. It says transpose right on top of the OK button. Exactly. Take the transpose. All right. So looking at this data, can anybody tell me what do you think is happening? Because this is Y data, just like we sort of saw before. But what do you think is happening here? So we have 3 columns. And we have this, which is some kind of code. And then we have the area name. And what's happening here? So for example, we have margin of error, estimate total population, estimate total population, age under 5. Yeah, there's a lot of information merged in B, but what kind of information? Yep, this seems to be like a little bit of an issue. So what do you think? So for example, what do you think might be the difference between this estimate over here and this one over here? So this says estimate total population, age under 5 years old, and this is margin of error, total population, age under 5 years. So that's the issue. This is becoming sort of a weird format. Everything's in one place, and we need to start splitting this up into different pieces, and that becomes very, very, very important. So one of the issues that's happening, if you look at this, for example, estimate total, is this. Let me show you. This is the page for the census, for the United States Census Bureau, and this is the information after it's organized a little bit better. So again, as you can see, what we have is in some of them, we're getting this information under 5 years of age. Then we're getting this on one row. On one row, we're getting the estimate, and on the other row, we're getting the margin of error. Same thing for the next one. On one row, we're getting the estimate, and on another row, we're getting the margin of error. So here, this one, for example, is the margin of error. This one's the estimate for under 5 years of age. So we need to start splitting this up into a way that we need to understand it better, that we can actually do something with it, that we can actually play with it and do our analysis with. The wonderful, wonderful thing is that it does, like Excel actually gives us some great tools to do this. So we're going to follow a few steps to actually clean this data better. So the first one, we're going to delete the first 2 rows of our table. These 2 rows over here. Why? Because they're not really giving us any information. So it's giving us a GeoID, which we don't need, with a name, which we don't need either, ID, geographical area name. So this is information we're not going to be able to use. So we're just going to delete it. So to do that, we're going to select the first 2 rows. So just go to the first row, to row number 1, click on it, hold the button, and drag it down to number 2. And that's going to allow you to pick both of them at the same time. And then when you're on top of those 2, click the right mouse button and just see where it says delete rows 1, 2. Delete them. All right. One more time, very quickly. Select rows 1 and 2. So click on row 1 and drag to row 2. Then right mouse button and delete rows 1 and 2. Wonderful. First step, check. Step 2. Now we need to actually move column C. So here's the thing. Excel, and we're going to use it in a bit, has a way to split this into different columns, which we're going to use, and that's going to help us a lot. The problem is that it's going to override whatever is on the right. So if we do it right now, it's going to delete all of this information. And that doesn't work for us. We actually need, this is the vital information that we need. So we need to move this to right between columns A and B. To do that, click on row C. So it selects everything. Again, right mouse button. Now we're not going to delete it. We're just going to click cut. Okay. You can also use Control X as a shortcut. So we're going to click cut. Then we're going to go over to column B. And we're going to we can click it, and we're going to click the right mouse button again. And not paste, we're going to go to insert cut cells. And that's going to insert them on this side of the table. Okay, so let's go again. So to delete the first couple of rows, again, remember to select them. Are they selected? Because once you select them, you should see this. There should be a delete button, a delete option. So if you take the first two rows, you have to select row 1 and then row 2. And then it should pop up the delete rows. If you don't see it there, then here's another option. You should be able to, let me open this up a little bit. There should be a delete button up here. See this one right here? That should work after you select them. You should be able to delete them like that. Okay. Why not move only left? So this, why did we move it here? Let me actually go back so we can do that one again. So why not move this to this side? That's also a possibility. So either way works. You can also move this to the other side. Now, the reason why dragging and dropping can be an issue, I mean, that can work, but in some instances, it can actually delete the data on that's already there in column B. All right, so let's do that again one more time, just in case. Let me delete notate. So again, if you want to give it a shot and you want, so you can select column C, and when you see the hand, you could actually drag it to this side, but that can sometimes lead to issues. So just in case, make sure that you click on column C, right button, cut, then you go to column B, right button, insert cut cells. And that's going to make sure that it inserts them. So the reason we're cutting that is because we are going to be working with column C. So why do I know I need to move this? We're going to be working with this one, and we're going to split this one into different columns. And the whole point is that if I do that and there's information on this side, it's going to overwrite it. So that's why we wanted to move it onto the left side so it doesn't overwrite the data on the right, because that can be an issue. All right. We got rid of the first two rows because they didn't have any information that was useful for us. And that just creates clutter. All right. Are you ready? Because the next step is the hardest one and the most important one that we're going to do. So Adam, drop a note over to the extra help channel so somebody can give you a hand with deleting this stuff. Petronil, you're actually trying to access Mark worksheet. So if you want to use it, you have to create a copy. So you go to File, create a copy, and create a copy online. If not, because if you're editing the same worksheet I'm using, then we're going to have issues. All right. So ready for the next one? Thumbs up. All right. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more complex, so pay attention to this one. This is very important because it allows us to transform a very complicated text column into several a very complicated column into several columns at the same time. So what we're going to do is first, we're going to highlight the entire C column. because now it's the C column. So again, remember to highlight it. So just click on it, and that's going to highlight it. Second, we're going to go to the data tab. So let me actually show you right here. There's the data tab is right here. Okay. So we are going to go to the data tab and click on that one. That's going to pop up many other options. By the way, if you're not seeing the whole thing, if you're looking at the single line, it still works. We can still do it. All right. So after you do that, the next part is going to be, we have to go here to split text to columns. All right. And very quickly, just to answer your question, is Google Sheets better for collaborative work? Not necessarily. That's up to taste. The thing is that if all of us are working on this same worksheet, then I can't show you because you can move stuff around and it becomes really complicated. So that it has nothing to do with collaboration. So we're going to click on split text to columns, and this is going to pop out. Okay. So this is going to allow you to sort of separate the column into pieces. As you can see, by default, it's actually opening up this space part. So what it's, oops, I lost this. So what it's doing is it's telling me that by default, it's going to use space to split this column up, but that doesn't work for us because if you look at it, or information is not split up by spaces. What is it split up on? Exactly. It's using exclamation points. So we are going to unselect space and we're going to go down here to custom value. And all you need to do is put one exclamation point. Just one. I mean, you can put two, you can put three, but it actually doesn't let you put more than one. Yes, that's what we're doing. We're going to custom and we're setting it to exclamation point. That's it. So space is going to be selected, just unselected. And what it's going to do before you do anything else is this. As you can see, it's splitting up all the little pieces of this into different rows. And this is going to be very, very, very useful for us in just a second. Okay. So I'm going to go back and do this one once more because I know this one's complicated. By the way, very important, because I know it depends a lot on the different Excel versions. If you're looking at it like this, if your ribbon is just one line like this, then it should be here, split text to column. But if you're having issues looking at it, my suggestion is go over here. See this little arrow over here? Go there and select the classic ribbon. And in that case, once you select the classic ribbon, you're going to see this big button that says split text to columns. Okay, they might look different. I'm using the online version. You might be using the desktop version, and they are going to look a little bit different. And that's important. So let's go it again from the beginning. Highlight column C, the whole column. Then we go up to data. Click on data. And then we click on this button, split text to columns. Once you open that, so when you look at it, it's probably going to look like this. So space is going to be the default. You want to unclick space, go down to custom, and add an exclamation point. Just one. That's all you need. Where it says data tools right on top of it, it actually does say split to text. Text to columns. It doesn't necessarily need to say split, just the one that says text to columns. Same thing. Yeah, some version might actually just say text to columns. So don't worry about the split. All right. So once you do that, you're going to click on apply, and this is what's going to happen. So as you see, this actually just transformed all the data into different rows, which is what we wanted to do. Remember, we had white data, now we have long data, which is what we wanted. And it split all of these pieces into under 5, under this, under that. And we still have this wonderful part of the information, which is exactly what we needed. But now we sort of understand what each of these is. Now, there's going to be empty columns because that's something something that Excel does. So whenever there's a split, it's going to leave a column just in case. All right, again, por favor. Yes. So let's do it again. I'm doing it again because this is really, really, really important to learn how to do. So once more, I'm actually going to switch this to a single line ribbon just in case. So I'm going to go back to home. All right. So part 1. Click on the C column, select the whole C column, because that's what we want to split into different pieces. All right. So, Ilinga, what you have is, yeah, you have a wizard. So yeah, just pick the delimiter and click next. And again, when it asks you for the delimiter, just use the exclamation point. So we select the whole C column. Then we go to data. So up here, it says data. We click on that. And that shows us the ribbon for data. In this case, we go to split text to columns and click on that one. Now, what you're going to see on this one, when you open it up, it should look like this initially. If you're using the online version, you should get space as the default. So you're going to click on space to unselect it, and you're going to click on custom to select it. And inside the white space, you're going to add an exclamation point. And here you have a little bit of a preview of how this is going to look. So it's going to split things up, and you're going to get estimate, then an empty column, then total, empty column, total population, empty column, and then age, then an empty column, and then the actual age range. That's it. That's all that's going to happen. All right. Exactly. Every time it finds the delimiter, not just this, every time it finds the delimiter, every split it makes, it's going to create a new column, an empty one, and just click apply. And this is what it should look like. Now I'm just changing the widths so that we can see everything that's there. All right. Okay. Are we here? Yes, yes. Okay. So now what we need to do, the next step is we need to remove. We did the preview. Okay, so 2 things that we're going to do. First, we're going to delete all the additional columns. So if you're following me exactly, it should be column D, F, H, J, and I think L, but I'm not sure. No, not L. Just D, F, H, and J. So the way to do that is click on the control button and just hold it down. And then we can click on D, click on F, click on H, and click on J. That's going to select all of them. Or you can do them one by one. I'm just doing it all. So this is one way to do it all at the same time. Then click on the right mouse button. And I didn't get my delete. So I'm going to go back to home. And I think it's, that's to do. Oh, it's not letting me. That's fun. Okay, let me see there. Oh, now it does. Okay, F, H, and J. Yep, delete columns. And that's it. The columns are deleted. So once again, click Control D, F, H, I, right mouse button. Now it's not letting me. Right mouse button. Huh, wonderful. Why did it go over there? Now, you should see delete. If not, just select them again. Thank you. H12 was selected twice. delete them, and this is what you should get. So at the end, we have new columns with the estimate margin of error over and over again, totals, total population, age, and the actual age range. And finally, one more thing. Well, if you have many blank columns to delete, we delete them all. I mean, you can delete them one by one. You can just go like this, delete, 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 and delete, or you can select them all and delete them all at the same time. Yeah, if not, you can actually go home and use the delete button over here. So just in case, let me, that's not the one I want. Give me a sec. 1, 2, doop, doop. So there's the columns back. So let's do it again with the delete button. So select here, delete, select, delete, or you can select F and H using the control and click on delete. Again, the important thing is delete all the extra columns. In case we have a lot of empty. So that's the problem, is that the columns are one. So one yes, one no, one yes, one no. So it's a lot harder. You're going to have to do it by hand. Finally, so one more thing that we need to do. We need to put odd numbers back to where they were. So we need to move B column back to this side, to where column H is now. So again, we're going to select column B. We're going to either select right mouse button, cut, and then on H, right mouse button and insert. So option 1, or you can actually click on column B, click Control X, then come back to column H, right mouse button, and insert cut cells. Actually, yes, yeah, you could sort columns, but it's complicated, very. So it's a lot easier to just delete them, especially right now. But we can talk about that later. Great. So this is the table that you should have at this point in time. But now we're actually going to do some more stuff because we have a lot of columns that we do not need. But let's actually first, before we actually do that, let's actually give a name to our column so that we know what we're working with. So the first thing is I'm going to add a new column to the top so that we have a header column. So go to column 1, just select, you don't even have to select it, just put the mouse on column 1 and click the right mouse button and just insert one row above. That's it. Just inserting one row at the top. So to add the numbers at the end, you just select the whole column, then use cut, then go to the H column and insert cut cells, just like we did before, but the other way around. So cut them and paste them. Or in this case, you can just paste them because it's the same information. So these columns are going to have some names, and I'm just going to take them from here. So we have variable. So this is going to be variable. This is going to be calculation. The next one's going to be segment. The next one is going to be group and age. This is group. So group, age, and this is age group. Age group, and this one's population. So all I'm giving is giving the scripted titles to everything. And so, by the way, if so far you've had issues and you're still not here, I have a little tip for you. So here at the bottom of the page where you have your tabs, you can right click on it and see that there's an unhide button. Click on that one. And here, see this one that says Census Data Starter? You can actually click on that one, and that's going to show you our clean table, which we're going to finish cleaning in just a bit. Okay? So in case you missed it, you actually have it already in your data sheet. So Anwar, the information that was down there in those empty columns is irrelevant, so don't worry about it. So the last step, all I'm saying is that if you come down here and you click, so come down here, click the right mouse button, and there's an unhide button. And there you're going to find this data sheet called Census Data Report Starter. you can just click on that so that you can see it. And it's going to be this table, which is the table that we're going to use for the second part of the lesson. All right. So as I was mentioning, this table is almost ready. We're almost done. Yes, Nicola, one more time, very quickly. Go down to the bottom part of the page where the tabs are, click the right mouse button and click Unhide. And select the one that's called Census Data Report Starter and just click OK. That's going to open up this sheet. Now, if you lost that one, please go to the Extra Help channel and let us know that you're having issues, and we'll try to help you there. So, if you can't edit it, you have to copy it. Very important. So, to move forward, we need to delete some of these columns because we're not going to use them. But before we can delete them, we have to make sure that we keep all of the data that we actually need. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do some filters. All right. Now, if you remember, to do filters, all we have to do is select the columns and click over here, which is the nice filter option, and just click on filter. And that's going to open up the filters on every single column as you can see them here. See these little arrows? Those are the filters for every column. All right. So one more time, select all of the cells, all of the columns, click on this over here on the sort and filter and pick filter. Okay. So that opens up the filters. And once we open up the filters, the first thing we're going to do is we actually want to filter this table over here, the calculation table, because we only want the estimate. See the margin of errors? We don't want the margin of error. We just want the estimate. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up that filter. We're going to unclick the select all and click the estimate because that's the only one we want. And when we're done, we're just going to hit apply. And as you can see, we just get the estimates. Everything else is gone. And this is going to be very, very important in just a second. All right. So one more time, we go up to here to where we have the little filter thingy, the little filter arrow over here. We're going to click on it. We're going to click on select all to unselect everything. And then select estimate and apply. All right. Next, once we do that, filter. Now let's go to the segment and we want to leave only male and female. So we're going to go to segment. So after we have the estimate in segment, we have totals, we have percentage, we have other things. Again, click select all, and then we're going to click female and male just to keep those two. And click apply. So again, second filter, we're going to go to segment over here, and we're going to select that one. We're going to click select all to unselect everything, and then female and male only. And there you go. That's another one. And finally, we're going to go into the age column filter. So that one's over here, age. So that was actually this one over here. We're going to click on that one. And we're going to click select all to unselect everything. And we're just going to click on the age. That's the only one we want, and click on that one. And that's it. We just filtered all of the data that we actually want to use. Remove the marks. And now that we have the data, we can actually start getting rid of some of these columns that we're not going to use. So for example, see this calculation column? We're not going to use it, so we can just delete it. So segment, that's going to be important. This one, which are we going to keep? Calculation, group, and age. No, we're going to delete calculation, group, and age. Calculation, group, That's this one. We're going to delete this one, and age. We're going to delete this one because we don't need it. And in truth, this one we don't need either. So if you want to delete it, feel free to delete it as well. Let me just check. Now we can keep that one. Let's actually keep that one. All right. Yes. So after we did all of our filtering, let me go back. Click, click, click. After we did all the filtering, one more, we're going to delete some of, we're going to delete some of these rows because we're not going to use them. So the calculation row, we're going to delete it. Now I'm going to use this one. The group that says total population, we're going to delete that one. And this one that says age, we're going to delete that one. So afterwards, you just should have variable, segment, age group, and population. This one, there's a reason why this one doesn't have data. Anybody can give me an idea why this one doesn't have data? Actually, that was my mistake. I actually deleted the filter. Let me just get back 1 second. Estimate, that's fine. No, that's fine. I can actually delete this, no problem. Nope, that one I want, that one I don't want, that one I don't want. Yeah, so the reason why these two don't have anything is because those are totals. Like complete totals. Yeah, exactly. The sum of all the males. Give me just a second. Oh, actually, I know which one I actually removed. So actually, my bad. Before you delete everything, this is very important. I forgot this tiny little part, which is vital. Before you delete everything, we want to copy it. So before you delete the columns, so I'm going to copy and then move over to census report data. And I'm going to just paste special, and I'm just going to paste the values. See that in this case, that get rid of the filters. And now we only have the data that we want. Yes, copy to a new sheet. And now we can actually delete this one. Also group and age. And this is what you should be left with. By the way, as I mentioned, there's this sheet hidden in your data sheet that you can unhide at any point. It's called Census Data Report Starter. Okay, so before we start making our pivot tables, we already went through the cleaning. And yes, this is why cleaning can get complex very, very quickly, and it takes a long time. So we have to be very careful not to delete the data that we need. So can I repeat again which part before we go on break? Copy paste. So after you do all the filtering, which we did over here, and before we delete the columns, because this is what you should have, you're going to select everything. Or if you want, you can just select it with the mouse because it's not that much data actually. You're going to hit copy. You're going to go to another, the sheet that's called Census Data Report. And well, you can just click here, and then you're just gonna click paste, and that's gonna paste all of the information. And once you do that, you're gonna select column B, calculation, column D, group, with the control, column B, column D, and column E, and no, column F I want, and you're just gonna hit delete. So either like this or up here, and delete those columns. So you should be left with only 4 columns: variable, segment, age group, and population. All right. So remember, if you're having issues, you can always come back, look at the video, and go through the steps one by one. If not, remember to unhide the data over here. Down here, click the right mouse button and you can unhide this census data report starter, which is going to have all of this information already cleaned for you. Yes, at the end, you should have a total of 36 rows. So 37 with the header. Okay. So remember, if you're having issues with it, let us know in the extra help channel. And before we move on to pivot tables and doing some pivot visualizations, we will take a short 10-minute break. So go grab a drink, go get a snack, and we'll be back in just a bit. And don't get frustrated. This is difficult. This is the first time you do it. So it's normal. So again, just breathe, get a drink. We're going to flow into the pivot visualizations, and you're going to have a lot of time to practice cleaning data in Excel. So let's take a 10-minute break, and I'll see you in a few minutes. All right. So hope you had a good break. Hope you had that drink, and let's come back and do some pivot tables. So let me go back to sharing. And this one. Great. So as I mentioned at the end, you should have this table. It's 36 rows of data, 37 with the headers. And what we have is exactly the information on both males and females, female population divided by age. So we have the specific number, and each row has that representation. Nonetheless, the issues that we had with this is that this is not the perfect way to look at this. So by the way, the filters for where male and female, just age, and let me see if I remember the other one, and estimate. So on calculation, estimate, on segment, male and female only, and on age, just age. All right. And those are the ones. But this is the data that we end up with. Now, as I mentioned, the issue is that this is not the nicest way to look at this data, and it can get complicated to actually play around with it. So what we're going to do, let me actually get rid of this one second. Let me hide it again. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a pivot table. And a pivot table is going to allow us to look at the data in a way that's convenient for us, very, very fast and very, very quickly. In other words, pivot tables from now on are going to become your best friends. They are amazing at getting the information organized very, very, very fast. So how do we do a pivot table? So the first thing, let's go over here, and we're going to do again Control A to select all of the data. Or if you want, you can just select all of the data just with the mouse. Okay. Then we're going to go to this wonderful part called Insert. See, we have this wonderful Insert button. So we're going to click on that one. And after we do that, the first tiny bit on that Insert table, Insert ribbon, is the Pivot table. And this is the magic one that we want. So I'm going to click on that one. And when it opens up, don't worry about this table range. That is the information that we selected. It's going to ask us if you want a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. Now, it's completely up to you. I'm actually going to open it on a new worksheet. So I'm going to keep that one selected, and I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, this opened up a new sheet down here. Let me actually remove those. And so down here, it created a new sheet. But I actually am going to move it over here, and I'm going to call that one, just rename it very quickly. And I'm going to call it Pivot Table. Pivot Table. All right, wonderful. So now we have our Pivot Table. Now, as you can see, there's nothing there. Nothing is happening yet. Okay. So what do we need to do here? Well, it turns out that see where it says over here, Pivot Table fields. This is where we're going to play around with our pivot table. This is where we're going to see what we can do with it and explore the power of a pivot table. So let's see what you want. Now that we have that, let's actually yeah, let's do something like this first. So I'm going to take first we have segment. So I'm going to take the segment. Actually, yeah, I'm going to take the population and go down here and just click and drag it over to values. And that's going to be the sum of the population. So all this is doing is taking all of the population column and summing it up. So this is the total population of what we have. But that's not the only thing that I want. I actually want to see the segment. So I'm going to take the segment and drop it over in columns. And ta-da! Now I magically have a table that tells me how many males and how many females there are by the number of population. And of course, I get a grand total. But still, I actually want to see some more information. I want to see the age groups. So I'm going to take the age group and I'm just going to drop it over in the rows table as well. Actually, I'm going to drop it like that. So interestingly enough, I'm getting the female segment. And as you can see, I'm getting all of the age groups and the population of each of those for each of those particular groups. Now, I can actually, I'm going to repeat it in a sec. So I can actually also organize it in different ways. So for example, if I take age group and just move it up and put it before segment, I get a different table that looks like this. So the age group comes first and then the segment. So again, it really depends on which way I want to organize this, that things actually get automated very, very quickly and get reorganized. I can actually also, let me actually do one more thing. I'm going to take the segment and I'm going to drop it over to the column section. So now I have a different view. So I have the segment up here. I have male and female, and I have the age group. So now I have the age group as my first column. Then I can see all of the numbers for females and on all of the numbers for males. So as you can see, depending on how you organize things over here, that's how they look. That's the table that you're going to get. And now this is a lot easier to read than the mess we had before. A lot easier. It's still not perfect, but it's still a lot easier. So I'm actually going to delete this table for a second. So remove. Actually, that didn't remove the whole key. The remove pivot table. And I'm actually going to do it again just in case, very quickly. So I'm going to my census data report. I'm going to select everything, absolutely every single little piece of it. Okay, very important. After I select everything, I'm going to go to insert, to the insert section of Excel. In the insert section, I'm going to click on pivot table. All right. And in here, again, I'm going to do, actually, because I already opened that worksheet, this time around, I'm going to pick existing worksheet. Now, very important. When you select this, you actually have to select the exact location. So I'm going to go to that table. I'm going to click cell A1. So as you can see, I'm actually telling it where I want that pivot table. And then click OK. And that's it. You just created the pivot table again. Now, the pivot table by itself doesn't have any information. We actually have to populate it. We actually have to tell it, yeah, you can put in the same sheet if you want. It's up to you. Since we're doing more stuff, I wanted a fresh sheet because you're going to see how much other stuff we're going to put into this report. So again, all we can do here, we can actually add different things over in rows, columns, values, and filters. So for example, in this case, I'm just going to add population to values because this is the value that I want, the sum of the population. Then I'm going to put the segment in rows. So now I have population by male or female. And finally, I'm going to add the age group also, though in this case, I'm going to add it to rows as well. In this case, because now we have this. So now we get, for example, if I put the segment before, so I get first the segment and the second column is the age group, or I can switch it around. So I get just, oops, I removed it completely. So age group and like this, just move it around, or we can get the age group first. But more interestingly, I'm actually going to leave the age group and I'm just going to move the segment to columns. So in this case, the columns are going to be the segment, in other words, male or female. And the age group is going to be the rows. All right. Questions so far? And by the way, as you can see up here, we still get those little filters. So that becomes really, really, really important because I can use them. For example, if I only want to see the male population, I can just do it like this and apply that filter, and that's it. Now I only get that column, or I can go back and get everything back, or I can just filter by group. Kimi, which part do you need me to repeat? How to make a pivot table or the whole thing? All right, so just have to do the pivot table. So very quickly, to create a pivot table, you select the data that you want to create the pivot table from. You go to insert, you go to pivot table. So again, insert is up here. Pivot table is here. And in this case, I'm going to do it in an existing location. By the way, I'm going to do it in this same sheet. And I'm going to pick here. I want it here. See, it actually tells you it's going to be in G5 and just click OK. And that's going to create your pivot table. And again, here you can, yeah, that could be interesting as well. You can do it like this. Actually, I think this makes no sense. Makes it more complicated, and just move stuff around. And please, so my biggest suggestion with pivot tables, if you haven't done it already, is play around with them. Play around with moving stuff, putting stuff in the filters table, what happens with that, moving it around the different places, seeing what happens when you look for different stuff in here, change the settings. There's a lot of things that you can actually do, which makes it really, really interesting. All right. Now, let me go back to my pivot table. All right, so we have this already. Now, the coolest thing about these pivot tables is that they are built in the cache. In other words, it's like living in temporary memory. So we can actually just recreate it over and over again. We can switch it around as many times as we want. And interestingly, as you can see, this already gives us a lot of information, a lot. So it gives us a lot of information about who's there, who's not there, what's like, if we wanted to see, oh, I need to see how many females over 85 there are. So I can just go and look for 85 years and over and look for the females, and there I have my answer. So this table is a lot easier to play around with and to get information from. But this is not necessarily the best way to do it. There are other ways in which we can see the information that are much more intuitive for us. And hence enter charts, enter visualizations. And the coolest thing is that we can actually create a visual or a chart from a pivot table. And by the way, answer Kalim, yes, you could actually get the average of population. So for example, if you go down here to the sum of population in values and click this little arrow, you get this value field settings. And you can actually pick sum, count, average, max. So I could actually pick average, but that might not actually make a lot of sense for what we're doing right now. So I'm going to go back and keep it in the sum area because the average is not going to make sense this time around. But yeah, you can do that. So what we're going to do, yes, we're going to do a chart. So the first chart we're going to do is going to be a bar chart. Although for some reason, Excel calls them particularly column charts, but yeah, we're not going to pay attention to those small things. So how to create a chart from a pivot table? Well, same thing, we create a chart in Excel for everything. We're going to select the whole table and we're going to go over to insert. So again, we have our nice insert place. So we're going to click on insert. And as you can see, here's the area where we have the charts. You can open it up here, but in this case, we want this kind of chart. We can see it right there. That's our column chart. So we're going to click on that one. And that's it. Boom. We get our chart. Yep. Clear all rows. So let's go again of how to create a chart from our pivot table. So let me go back. Get rid of it. So again, I'm going to select the whole pivot table. I'm going to go to insert over here. So again, insert is here. Then I'm going to go to my charts area over here, and I'm going to pick this one right here, which is my bar chart. And that's it. We get a nice bar chart with the specific information that we are actually looking for. In other words, this is a nice bar chart of something. What is it missing, by the way? What's the first thing that you think is missing from this chart? Yeah, it's missing a title. So that's so actually, no, look, male and female are right here. The age groups are right here on my x-axis, and the number is right here. Now, not the best and easiest to read, but you can definitely look at them. But the biggest thing that it's missing is a title. So if we want to change the title, there's actually a few ways to do it, but probably the fastest one is just click on it and double click. After you click on it once, double click on it, and here we can change it. So there's tons of titles, and I'm going to be very, very specific. So this will be US population by sex, and be very specifically male and female. And that's it. I mean, I can definitely add more information. We can, and by the way, you can just organize it in whatever place you want to organize it. But that's very, 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 very important. Question: if I change something in the pivot table, like if I change a number, will that change change the information inside the graph? And the answer is, let's actually play around with it. I'm going to put a 10 here. And no, you can't change part of the pivot table. So the answer is no, it shouldn't let you, which is fine. Okay. So sometimes it does, but most of the time it's not going to let you, because if you change information here, it's going to, remember, this is not a table that's there. This is information that's coming from somewhere else. So if you wanted to change it, you would have to copy this and just paste the values. Then you can change as much as you want. If you can change the value, it is going to change in whatever chart is being built from that information. Exactly. If you do it directly from the pivot table, it's not going to. If you copy that the values from it, yes, it should. Correct. You would have to change the raw data. All right. So we already built this one, and yeah, we changed the title. Yeah, what does it seem to be missing here? So what's the issue with this chart? There's something else apart from the title. Something very particular. Yeah, that's one of the things. Interesting. So we see that under 5 years of age is over here all the way at the end. And this one should be here, right? Should be the first one. Anything else that you notice? Yeah, you can put access titles. That's fine. I mean, it's a good thing that you should do it all the time. That's the other one. Yes. So it turns out 5 to 9 is also here in the middle, and that one should also come over here. So why do you think that's happening? Because that's something weird. Why is that happening? I mean, it's happened in our table. See, we have 5 to 9, and we have under 5 years over here. Is it not sorted? So that's the question. Is it because this is not sorted, or why isn't it sorting correctly? What do you mean data starts from 2 million? It doesn't. Actually, data starts from 0. Look at the 0 right here. 2 million is all the way up here. There's quite a bit of distance between those two. So it turns out that the data is sorted. So that's very, very important. So in this case, because we have this one here that starts with a U, and because it has words, it's treating this as alphabetical sorting. And in alphabetical sorting, numbers come first. But also, 1 from 10 comes before 5. So yeah, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. So there's two things that we need to do. So the first thing that we need to do to fix this is here where it says 5 to 9, we need to change this to a 0. So 0, 5 to 9. Why? So it actually goes to the right place. So I'm going to do that first. And the second one is, what do I do with under 5? Actually, yeah, I'm just going to do 0 to 5. You don't need to do a double 0. That's interesting. Just 0. I'm using the 0, 5 just to keep track with the other 0, 5 that I put over there. And once you do that, of course, that's going to change over here. Let me actually, come on. I hate it when you do that. Thank you. And then once you do that, we go up here where we have we go back here. And now we can sort it. And we're going to sort it in ascending order. Once I do that, look at our graph. Now that changes. So interesting when it comes to editing. You cannot edit the numbers, but you can edit the text in a pivot table. I can't edit this. Oops. I can't edit these numbers because they are sums from other numbers. They're coming from a different place, but I can change this. And once we do that, look what happens. So let's just do that again very quickly. Let me see if I can take it back. So this is what our graph was looking for just before. I think I'm missing one more. Yep. So what you're going to do is where it says 5 to 9, you're just going to add a 0 to the 5. I'm going to add a 0 to the 9 because I'm obsessive in that sense. And on the under 5, I'm just going to say it's going to go from 0 to 0, 5. And then up here to the filter button, because with the filter button, we can also sort. So I'm going to click on the filter button and sort ascending. And as you can see, our graph changed. Now, you did that again. Now we actually have our 0 to 5 in the first place, then 0, 5 to 9 in the second place, where they should be. Ooh, actually. This one should say 0 to 4 because we already have 5 on this in the next one. Because it's under 5, remember? Okay. All right, so now we have a much easier a graph that actually shows the data in the order that it was intended, and a pivot table that shows the data in the right way. Ilaria, what are you doing? Are you using the online version or are you using the desktop version? So you're looking at those things because that's like a different edition. You can actually click on the sum of population and actually switch up what you're measuring. So it's just more tools from the desktop version. It happens. All right. So interesting fact from this data, females seem to live longer than males, or at least that's what the data would suggest, because as time goes by, there's more females and less males. So that happens. And actually, there's a lot more younger males than older males and vice versa, which is interesting. So so we can't change data so again, I'll show you what you can do to change if you need to change data in just a bit. Let's actually finish up with our charts and do something much more interesting. So we fix that one, and let's actually do one more. Actually, oh, so that's interesting. So just by visually scanning the bar chart, what is the largest single demographic group? So what is the biggest group, either males or females, and what age range? Just by looking at the graph, what would you say? 25 to 29 male. 25 to 29 looks, yep, that would be around it. And that's the wonderful thing about charts. very, very quickly, you can see the data in a way that's very easy to understand and very easy to search without having to actually go to the actual data over here. But once you see it over here, it's a lot easier to just check it here, 25 to 29, and it's that number over here. So yeah, that's great. So yeah, you can fill those exercises in a bit. So what are the 4 smallest age groups in terms of population size? The 4 smallest groups. So 80 to 84, yes. Then 85 and over. 75 to 79. And yeah, it looks like 70 to 74, which is sort of expected. Yeah, the oldest ones should be the ones. All right, so let's actually do one more chart interesting. One more interesting chart that we can do. The first one is, let's actually make some, create another chart or change the chart. We can actually do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy this one. So I'm going to copy. So again, right mouse click, copy. And then over here, I'm just going to paste it. And again, as you can see, I'm literally just pasting the same chart. So why am I doing this? Because if I wanted to have another chart with the same information, I just want to show you that you can transform charts. How do you transform them? So I'm going to click on the chart. And when you do that, so when you have a chart selected, you're going to see this thing pop up over here. See that it says chart over there? So you can click on that. And just because it's there, now we're going to go over here to our chart type, and we're going to click on the pie chart. So I'm going to click on the pie chart, and ta-da, we have a pie chart. That looks terrible. Give me just a second. Where did it go? Over here. So, I don't want the pie chart actually. So pie chart doesn't actually work very well for us. I'm actually going to pick, let me delete this. Let's pick a line chart. That's not going to show. So we're going to click on this little arrow over here. Open it up. And here's my line chart. So I'm going to transform it into a line chart. That looks a lot better. So again, once you have a chart done, you can just transform it into something else without any issues. And now we can actually look at the different populations, like if it was flowing. I mean, it's not actually flow because this is sort of change of time is the amount of population. But just by looking at this chart, what do you see that seems interesting? That's a lot easier to see here than it was on our bar chart. So here's this is one of the interesting points over here. So at the same time that the population of males seems to just dip, the population of females starts growing, which is interesting. That's one of the interesting things. People die more between 40 and 60. Actually, I would say that here's an interesting deep over here. This one over here. But this point is also another very interesting point. What do you see happening at this point? What changes? Yeah, apart from the change in age. But look at the lines, what happens there? So yeah, this is like, it just keeps talking about more, that there be more women than males as we age. More females than males as we age. So, but it turns out that, look at this. So it turns out that the younger population is more males than females. This is what's happening over here. So as you can see, very, very clearly, all of this time, there seems to be a little bit of a gap, more males than females. Then as they hit, as they get close to 30, it starts dropping down. And at this point, it's about the same number of people. But then from here on out, there's more females and less males. And this gap sort of stays. Not only does it stay, but here it becomes really, really wide. So it's interesting. There's more males younger, and there's more females as we age, which is very interesting statistically speaking, and health speaking as well, but details. So yeah, based on some preliminary market research that you've done, so you've determined that the target demographic for the new group of products they want to pitch are adults ages 55 and over. So what is the largest demographic group according to this criteria? So 55 and over, what is the largest demographic group that's 55 and over? So I'm getting 55 to 59 female. Let's see, 55 to 59 and female. Yep, this from 55 and over, this is definitely the biggest slice of data. And that becomes really, really important. So imagine that if you had to pick something, this is going to give you all the information you need, especially because, again, what you're saying is we're building a product for people 55 and over. So it's all of this big track of the population. Now, here's a question. If we already decided that and we only wanted to look at that tiny piece of the population, shouldn't there be an easier way to just zoom in? Well, it turns out that there is. So let me introduce you to one of the coolest words in data analytics, the slicer. All right. So what's a slicer? A slicer is a wonderful, wonderful thing that we can build, that we can create, and Excel allows us to create it very, very quickly. That is going to help us zoom into the data. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're on top of your pivot table. So just like with charts, I want you to look at this piece over here. Just one sec. See over here, when you're in the chart, it says chart. But if I click on my pivot table, click outside, now it says pivot table. And that's what I want. I want to open that pivot table thing over here. And when I open it, I get this wonderful option over here that says insert slicer. So and you're going to see that a slicer is actually better than a filter for this kinds of cases. So I'm going to click on the slicer and just click insert. And in this case, I want to create a slicer for the age group. So very particularly, we want the slicers for the age group, okay? Why the age group? Because that's what I want to zoom into. And I'm just going to click OK. And here's my wonderful slicer. See this slicer over here? So this has everything, all of the age groups from 0 to 85 and over. And in this case, everything is selected. But it turns out, remember the question was 55 and over. If I wanted to zoom in the slicer, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on 55 to 59 and just drag it all the way down. And ta-da, my table now got zoomed in. My US population got zoomed in. And of course, my line chart got zoomed in. And this is all with a slicer. Exactly. You pick whatever you want. And the slicer is a lot cooler and a lot faster than using the filters, because the filters, you have to go in, you have to unclick in, et cetera, et cetera. This, I can just say, I just want to pick one segment. I want to pick a few segments. So again, just click and drag to whatever segments you want to see, or just click and drag for this ones. And if you want to jump one, yes, and now another one, you click this one, then control this one, just hold the control button, and you can just pick them, pick a few of them without having them to be one beside the other. And that is the cool thing about the slicer. So again, the question that we asked would have been a lot easier to answer if we had the slicers, because this, now we can see that definitely females 55 to 59 is the biggest group. So yeah, let's do that again. I'm going to clear the filter. I'm going to delete the slicer, and I'm going to do the slicer again. So I just want you to remember this, and this is important. So whenever you create something anything, a pivot table, a chart, etc. in Excel, over here, where right now there's nothing because I haven't selected anything, there's going to be an additional option. So again, if I click chart, see, chart appears over there. If I click nothing, it goes away. If I click the pivot table, there's my pivot table option. So I want to click on that. And after that, I actually want to go over here to my slicer. So slicer is over here. And slicer, when you hit insert slicer, all you need to pick is what is the slicer for. So it could be the population, but that wouldn't be useful. Segment, that could be half useful. Like for example, if I do a segment one, that's interesting. Again, I can just pick female, male, and female. So that would just let me sort of filter out. But you know, this one's not that interesting. But still, so in this case, I'm going to just clear it. And oops, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to go again, insert slicer, and this case again for age group. And that's the slicer we get for the age groups. And again, I'm just going to pick the last ones from 55 to 85. So just click and drag, and that's how you get the information. Interesting. So let's go. That's the slicer. That's the pivot table. I'm going to open it up. If you open it up with the classic ribbon, do you get something? And are you on desktop? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So for some reason, sometimes, yeah, you can go to insert as well if it doesn't work. So you can go to insert, and you should be able to, let me just check here. No, that's from table range. No, yeah, you have to go to pivot table. Yeah, so if you're having issues, because when you open up the ribbon, you should see both, a slicer and timeline. Because for some reason, it also happens to me once in a while when I just have this one, it just gives me the option for the time. But yeah, if you're having issues looking for the slicer, just keep looking for it, and it's going to depend what you're, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Slicer is in filter. Thank you. Here's the slicer, by the way. In the insert, here's the slicer. Let me, where is my, here. So if pivot table doesn't work, go to insert, and slicer should pop up over here. All right. Okay, so a few questions. And so if you have any questions, please start asking. Don't be afraid to ask. And here's a couple of questions that I have for you. Can we hide the slicer for a moment? What do you mean by hide it? So you can actually clear it just by clicking. So here's the thing. If you want to clear it, the fastest way to clear the slicer is here. See this button over here that has the little X on top of the slicer? If you click on that, you clear it, and then everything goes back to normal. But actually hiding it, you would have to sort of move it somewhere that it doesn't bother you. But yeah, you can just select what you want. Like if I'm selecting this, and if you need to go back, just click here. Boom, everything's back. Or you can just, you know, select a bunch of them. By the way, yeah, this is the other way to select and unselect list-wise with this button, but it's a little bit complicated. So you can select a few and just click here, and boom, it goes back. So here's a few questions for you just to remember things. Talking about transpose, we saw this at the very, very, very beginning of the lesson. What would this table over here look like if we transposed it? So this table, what does it look transposed? A, B, C. And remember, the way it works is it transforms, in this case, rows into columns. So always look at the pairs. So every column becomes a row. Yay, everyone. Yes, so the right answer is C. So as you can see, this pair 1, 4 becomes the row 1, 4. This column 2, 5 becomes the row 2, 5, and this column 3, 6 becomes the column 3, 6. That is transposing. And the same thing happens to our data when we transpose it. And here's another one, an even more important one. What cases can you think of where a pivot table might be useful? For census data, for comparison data, yes. For filtering, for sales numbers. So for example, you can definitely use it for sales numbers to see filter by, like, organize it by year, by month, by day. There's tons of stuff you can do. So yeah, we can take a lot of raw data and just transform it into a very simple table or chart, as we could see, because we can create charts. And the coolest things, we can create charts that move. By the way, and before I forget this one, so we had this wonderful question about what happens if I needed to create a pivot table and I needed to change information in that pivot table. Well, we can do it. So this is what we're going to do. We can take this whole pivot table. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to another worksheet. I'm going to go to paste special, and I'm going to paste the values only. Okay. So now, of course, I lose my filters, which is a bummer. But at the same time, now I can actually do whatever I want with this information. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this, just this, actually this data over here. Let's just take this one. I actually don't need the grand totals, by the way, so I'm going to delete column D. So I'm going to take this information without the grand total, and I'm going to insert, actually with the age groups, with the header, and I'm going to insert, let's do a normal chart. So as you can see, this is practically the same chart that we did. Now, the cool thing about this one, in this case, if for whatever reason you need to change the data, is that now this is just data. This is no longer a pivot table because I just copied the values, not the actual pivot. So in other words, this I can change. So I could actually move here and change this to 0. And as you can see, it actually does change. Oops. See over here, let's do it again. So now I'm going to go and put another big number, and boom, now it's there. I'm going to do a bigger number at a couple of zeros. And now it became too big. See the problem with adding zeros? Zeros always makes things too big. So now every time I change data in my table, because this is the table that I'm using for this chart, so this chart is going to take whatever's here. So this I can change to anything I want. 520, this is going to be 532, et cetera, and it's just going to show over in the chart. And that's it. Exactly. Now it became live. Nonetheless, very important. This one's also live, but because it's a pivot table getting information from somewhere else, I can change this. It's not going to allow me to change this under any reason. But this is very, very important. If this pivot table is actually feeding from a source that's changing, so for example, if this changes, so let's actually, so see, we have the pivot table over here. Let me actually do a little bit of it. So this information I can change. So I can change this to a 0, and my pivot table didn't change. Why didn't it change? It's a good question, because it's probably not this one anymore. Give me just a second. Flip. Well, my pivot changed. Let me see if it's changing over here, probably. Not changing that quickly. Interesting. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's a good reminder. So it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't change live. It has to be refreshed. And once I refresh it, here it is. Here's the change. So it doesn't refresh automatically, but it does refresh. See, this one refreshed as well. And now the chart's refreshed. And now this chart looks weird. I always forget about refreshing. I can't undo things here. Oh, see, I just messed up my data. See why you don't change the data without having a backup plan? Actually, I do have a backup plan. Unhide. Open up my table so I can get the data. And now my Excel sheet decided to just stay working on it. So nonetheless, that was practically the end of the lesson. I don't know if I'm going to get my Excel sheet. Oh, I got it back. Wonderful. Which is the data that I missed? It's male 20 to 29. So male 20 to 29. So it's these two. So I'm going to copy these two and just put them back. And I'm going to refresh my pivot tables. And now everything's back to normal. So yeah, make sure that don't mess with the data unless you have a backup. So it's always great to have a backup. So great job, everyone. So now today we actually learned how to do pivot tables, how to clean data, which I know. So cleaning data, by the way, this is sort of very important. We spend a lot of time cleaning data, a lot, because it's going to, and cleaning data doesn't mean that the data is necessarily messy. It's just that we need to organize it in a way that works for us. And by the way, pivot tables are one of the ways we use a lot to organize the data into something we can use. Not just for reports, not just for dashboards, something that we can actually use. So my suggestion is play around with them. There's tons of stuff you can do with charts. There's tons of stuff you can do with pivot tables. We just covered the very, very surface of it so that you can go in and just start playing around with it as much as you want. So here's another question before we end the lesson today. What kind of charts can we create from pivot tables? So, and the answer is, depending on the data, we can practically do anything. So if the pivot table has the data for whatever chart we're trying to make, whether it's a line chart or a pie chart or a bar chart or a column chart, it doesn't matter. We can make anything. So as long, just like we can with any data. So Excel will allow us to do anything that Excel allows. It doesn't have every single chart out there, but it has quite a few. So again, play with them. So remember that you've been working, hopefully, with your own data. So you've been collecting data, hopefully, or you're starting to collect data, whether it's financial data, personal data on exercise, on sleep hours, on study hours, etc. So how could you use that data and pivot tables, now that you know how to put them together, to actually learn more about yourselves, learn about your habits, your behaviors, etc.? What do you think? Or what would you like to try out? Screen time, health, sleeping hours, monthly expenses. Interesting. Yeah. So, by the way, for finances, just because I use it all the time, it's great because it allows you to do pivot tables to figure out by year, by month, how much you're spending on different things. And that allows you to budget. So how much are you spending in supermarket? How much you're spending in rent? How much you're spending in phone services, internet services, etc. Diet, also a great way to figure out the kinds of foods that you're eating. The hardest thing with the diet is to track your food, by the way. But it can be done. And now that you know how to use pivot tables, maybe it'll be a little bit more fun. So here's a little bit of a tidbit before we end the lesson. Again, if you have questions, just start posting them on the live chat. Here's the biggest and most interesting thing. So I know, because I've been there, and because I have to do it all the time. Cleaning data seems to be a little bit more than playing around with pivot tables. Pivot tables are the cool part. Charts are the cool part. Nonetheless, cleaning data is so incredibly important. So also practice cleaning data. Get good at cleaning data, because here's the thing. Every single data analyst out there can do charts. Every single one of them can do pivot tables because that's what we do. You know what a lot of them don't like doing? Cleaning data. And if we're good at cleaning data, not only do we get better pivot tables and better charts, we actually get much better opportunities because we are one of those rare data analysts that enjoys cleaning data. All right. Questions before we end this session? Yes, play with it, play with data. That's the biggest thing you can do. Play with data. Play with it. Play with all the tools that Excel allows you, because it's a lot of them. And as you move on, you're going to get other much more powerful tools that work even better as we combine them. Because on a regular day as a data analyst, you're going to be using Excel, you're going to be using SQL, you might be using Python, you're going to be using Tableau or Power BI or Looker. You're going to be using a lot of tools at the same time. And each of them is going to become much more interesting. All right. So if there's no more questions, great work, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session, both parts, even with the frustrating part. Yes, sometimes cleaning data is frustrating, but it gets easier and faster and better with time. And I don't know if there's any additional